seconds in. Now 5 seconds in. We are still go 30 seconds in now.
There's a lawsuit hanging over Ripple right now. A group of people are saying that XRP and Ripple are sort of tied together and that they, XRP could be considered an unregistered security. What would you say to them?
Well, it's pending litigation, so I'll probably be a little bit, muted on the topic. Suffice it to say, we don't think it has merit. These are people who didn't buy XRP from us. We also don't believe XRP is a security. I think, one of the poignant arguments in my point of view is, if I went back to the office and said to the team at Ripple, hey, we're shutting down, XRP trades on 130, 140 exchanges around the world. XRP would keep trading. You're like, wait a minute, okay, so if it's a security of what? It's not a security of Ripple. It doesn't give you the rights to dividends or ownership of Ripple, the company. We have shareholders of Ripple, right? We raised a Series A financing, a Series B financing, and we own a lot of XRP, but they're two separate things.
At the same time, we've seen recently Block One had the hammer come down on them from regulators. They were basically said that they were selling an unregistered security.
$524 million. Just
it's interesting you call that a hammer. They raised $4 billion and they paid
it's a light hammer. It's a light hammer.
You and I have a different judgment of what a hammer is.
Maybe it's a fly swatter.
Hammer.
Either way, so what's the difference between Block One and their token EOS versus what you guys are working on?
Well, I think one really important distinction is the XRP ledger existed before Ripple, the company. It's a public blockchain. You can go back and see kind of transactions 0, 1, 2, 3. You can see when Ripple was incorporated in the Secretary of State in California. Ripple didn't create the XRP ledger. The XRP ledger had utility prior to Ripple's existence. Certainly we are an interested party in the success of the XRP ledger, for sure. We own a lot of XRP. But it's a little bit like saying, Exxon owns a lot of oil. That doesn't make oil a security. Exxon's clearly interested in how to, we can argue about the health of the, I'm not here to debate carbon emissions.
Climate crisis, you want to get into that?
Maybe this is the example I wanted to choose here, but suffice it to say, Exxon cares a lot because they have a lot of exposure to in this case, commodity called oil. Is Exxon doing things that are trying to drive a healthy ecosystem around oil? Yeah.
Well, to me, this feels like a turf battle. Again, I come from the U.S. regulatory industry, and there's always a question of what does the Fed do versus the OCC versus state regulators. And in this case, the question is, who gets to be the boss of cryptocurrency? Is it FinCEN? Is it the IRS? Is it some other federal regulator? Or in this case, SEC is saying, we want to be the boss. Yet we don't want to lay out clear rules. This clearly is a chance for them to say, we get to say, have a say, big say about how crypto works. Yet at the same time, we don't have the responsibility to put out clear set of rules because 8 years. They can clarify why Ripple, that's Ethereum, or Bitcoin is not, and also give guidance to all the other companies are demanding the same thing as Ripple. Filecoin, Stellar, Tether, Brave, those are all companies where there was a stock by the founding company, and then tokens have been issued, and those tokens have been sold to members of the public and are held broadly, not just by accredited investors.
Is that today the U.S. has said, the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission has said, Bitcoin is not a security. They've said Ether is not a security. And that has given them the good housekeeping seal of approval. That allows entrepreneurs to say, okay, great, I can build upon that, I can invest in that, I can do that with certainty. For Ripple, because we use XRP in our tech stack, we will go, and I've had this experience, I will talk to CEOs of other companies and they'll say, well, look, hey, we need to, we're not going to work with Ripple's products enabled by XRP until there's clarity there. There's over 100, 150 companies working in the XRP ecosystem. And, without that certainty, we have given, here in the United States, we have given an advantage to two technologies in Bitcoin and Ether that are today, by virtue of the mining capacity managed in China by a small number of miners, we're really enabling China to have an advantage.
First off, I'm an ex-regulator myself. I work for the Federal Reserve at the Board of Governors in the payments group. And just my observation is, and again, I'm not a regulator now, but that just wasn't the way we did things at the Fed. You didn't launch litigation on the last day before the commissioner of your organization resigned, especially going into like a new administration. I mean, Ripple's been around for 8 years. There's been a long time to set clear rules, and then you could have arguments or discussions over what behaviors need to change to meet the rules. But to actually just file an enforcement action out of the blue on the day that you resign, so you're not around to actually take the heat for the consequences of what you've done, and then you just sail off into the holidays and a new administration. That's kind of an unprecedented situation. The question is, what was the reason after 8 years that required an urgent enforcement action just on the last day of under a particular leadership? And so this is a highly unusual situation, just to start with, in terms of the conduct of the SEC, independent of the substantive issues of the case. So it does have me scratching my head as to why this timing, why in this manner.
What's frustrating, I think, is here in the U.S. you see lots of different kind of constructs. I think you even tweeted about this, but there was a Department of Justice report, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it listed it was like 70 to 80 pages, and listed 8 separate U.S. regulatory bodies, each of them with a different view about crypto's a property, no, crypto's a commodity, no, crypto's a virtual currency, or no, could crypto be a security in some cases. And look, for the US, I think we celebrate the leadership the US has had around the internet of information as we know it today. And it's in part because early on, and back in the mid 90s, there was a clear regulatory framework that allowed people to invest with certainty, with clarity. And you've had a lot of investment come in and a lot of success stories that are well known. Without that here in the US, I think it's really hard for the U.S. to compete on a level playing field with what's happening in some of these other markets.
Now, if you talk about the whole crypto kind of world, I got to this from the kind of the payments thing, because I've been looking for a way in which we could take the cost of payments down by 99%, the way we've taken down the cost of trading in securities. In the payments world, we use we oftentimes use the term of the payments rails. There's the credit card rails, there's checking rails, there's the FedWire rails. Around. So let's to understand how I think to think about the cryptocurrency world is there are 3 parts of it: the blockchain, the token, and the protocol. And the 3 of them operate together to create one solution, one integrated solution that has the capacity to revolutionize the way we move things of value around the world.
Unfortunately, the U.S. regulatory framework it's really out of sync with what other major economies are doing. And you see in a very positive way, some countries, I'll highlight in a constructive way, the UK. The UK has a very clear taxonomy, what's called the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, I think, took the lead on characterizing what different assets should be viewed based on the use case. And I think that helped everybody in the UK know, as they thought about crypto, how to use crypto, how the rules for the road were clear. I can highlight in a positive way what MAS has done in Singapore, what FSA has done in Japan, Switzerland, UAE. These are all examples where there's clarity.
The ironic thing here is, if you read what the mission is of the SEC, it's to protect investors, to maintain fair, orderly, and efficient markets, and facilitate capital formation. If you go through each of those 5 things, protecting investors, is this fair? Is this orderly? Is this efficient? Does this promote capital formation? And in every one of those checkboxes, this action achieves exactly the opposite outcome. Investors have been harmed. This certainly isn't fair because you can't understand why Ripple and not Tether or not like Stellar, not like any of those other lists or Bitcoin or Ether. You're not making clear what the distinctions are. It is certainly not efficient or orderly. I mean, there's been chaos in the marketplaces. Folks don't know whether to list or delist. There's problems with liquidities. Loans are being called. I mean, if you wanted to create a situation that was a parallel to like having like Lehman Brothers go down without clear and orderly wind down, I can't think how you could create more chaos in the marketplaces than just to file an enforcement action with no context, on the last day of the commissioner's leadership of the SEC.
I mean, let me use a railroad analogy to make the point. The token is the equivalent of the boxcar. It's the thing into which you embed something of digital value that needs to be moved from one place to another, from one part of a blockchain to another. The blockchain is the cargo invoice, is the invoice in the cargo manifest. And the rails is the protocol. And you have to think about all three as one integrated solution that enables you to accomplish the purpose of moving anything of value around the world at the speed of light at no cost, the way we talk about email.
I think if XRP were deemed a security here in the United States, that, where you have other major G20 markets that have already taken a different view, it's kind of like, I'm not aware of any market globally that thinks XRP is a security. And so, you think about it, all right, so why would we here in the United States want to make a decision that's out of sync with other major G20 markets? Why would we want to create an uneven playing field that advantaged these Chinese-controlled technologies, particularly, frankly, in a Trump administration, whatever you may think about that? I just step back and think, all right, why, is this the best path? Who are we solving for? And, there's plenty of conspiracy theorists that, are out there that have all kinds of conjecture about all kinds of things. I just look at it and think about it. Look, you've got a bunch of companies here in the United States building upon an open source technology that isn't controlled by the US, isn't controlled by China, it isn't controlled by Ripple. We should want to fuel and foster that. We should want to provide the clarity, the certainty, the level playing field. And I think that if there were a negative determination made, that would mean that, okay, in the United States, people would need to be thinking about, if you trade XRP, well, you need a broker-dealer license. You also have examples which, look, today PayPal has announced their intent to support these things. And they have actually, my understanding is they have been relatively transparent that, hey, we're not supporting XRP at the opening of, PayPal support because of the lack of regulatory clarity. Well, all right, so that gives these Chinese-controlled technologies, where the Chinese Communist Party certainly has, if not control, heavy influence. I mean, again, I'll digress just to simply point out, when Ant Financial, the largest IPO in history, is delayed by the Chinese Communist Party, let's not pretend that if the Chinese Communist Party wants to provide control or oversight in some way of these concentrated miners in China, I think that's not realistic.
Well, so 2 years. I personally think that cryptocurrencies are here to stay. I think there is there's a future for them. I'm not sure they ever come to rival the dollar or other hard currencies, but there's a whole section of the world that really is hungry for functioning currencies that they can't find their local currencies. There's 140 countries in the world. Every one of them has a currency. Probably 2/3 of them are not worth the polymer or the paper they're written on. And those parts of the world rely on hard currencies. Bitcoin may solve some of the problems, whether it's Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency.
People who just talk about blockchain are talking about something very interesting, but it's a piece of enterprise technology that's an advanced database, and a private blockchain unconnected to the global, to the Bitcoin or another digital currency blockchain is the equivalent of the intranet. Remember when we had intranets to begin with, where it was really cool, you could do internal communication with people in your own companies? But it wasn't really until those intranets were connected via the internet protocol to other intranets to create the World Wide Web of intranets called the Internet, that the world changed.
I think they have been focused on dominating next generation technologies. What we saw happen with 5G networks as an example, we lost the 5G race, and I think we're in danger of repeating that mistake in the battle over what I'll just describe as global financial infrastructure and global payments. So look, I think it's a long-winded way of saying we need a level playing field, not just for the many companies in the XRP community to compete effectively, but we need that for other projects as well. I'm not trying to be just kind of pro XRP, but I'm trying to look at like all boats rise. I want crypto to do well.
And then we can just climb down into the specifics of the actual case, what's known as the Howie test, which is the test for whether something is a security or is a currency. And really, from my point of view, it comes down to whether an organization like the SEC thinks that people out there can't tell the difference between investing in a gold mine, which has its own stock, which truly is a security, versus gold, which is pretty clearly not a security. And so in the case of Ripple, as you said, Ripple was a company that did raise money from venture capital. It does have investors. I'm one of those investors. I know the difference between when I'm investing in a company versus when I'm investing in something that might have been associated with that company, but is not an investment contract of that company. And that's XRP, which I'm also a holder of. And the SEC has taken the point of view that people don't know the difference, and it is suing to recover $1.3 billion on behalf of those investors, and in the process is destroying tens of billions of dollars of value for those investors. And it does remind me of a quote from Ronald Reagan, who said the scariest words in the English language is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. So when somebody comes to help me as an investor, which is the primary mission of the SEC, and helps me by destroying 10 times the amount of value that they're quibbling over, you got to scratch your head, because that just doesn't really make sense from a public policy point of view. It doesn't make sense from a financial point of view. And so it really begs the question.
Look, I think early on, there's this kind of argument that, hey, Bitcoin is super decentralized, and therefore, it can't be a security. And you kind of look at that, you're like, all right, so let's help people understand how the XRP ledger is decentralized and how it is open source. And frankly, even recently, there have been things that the XRP community have championed for the open source ledger of the XRP ledger that we have opposed that still passed. And if that's not a definition of what is open source technology, like I'm not exactly sure what is, but I think there was a perception that, okay, the first framework was decentralization. And that meant that Bitcoin got the good housekeeping seal approval, and then not that long after, Ether got it. And then it stopped. And then it's like, well, maybe decentralization isn't the right thing. Because I think, once you kind of educate people about how the XRP ledger works, you're like, all right, let's yield that the XRP ledger is also decentralized. Well, it's like, okay, do people own different amounts, and therefore that it's different? And I just think it has been hard, and some of the things that have been published that are intended to make it clear are frankly really long kind of frameworks that is like, okay, I don't know, I'm pretty educated about all things crypto, and I read these things, I'm like, all right, wait a minute, I'm not exactly sure how to think about this. And look, I go back to what I said earlier. It was just recently that the DOJ came out with this report on cryptocurrencies, and in talking in some ways how they can be used for illicit purposes. But when just recently you're talking about 8 separate US regulatory bodies, it just makes it hard for companies in this space to operate.
The world is going to change in finance when we connect the private blockchains via the Bitcoin or Ethereum or other protocol to the other blockchains in the world, have a global blockchain that's the World Wide Web of blockchains that'll fundamentally change the way in which not only do we move value around the world at the speed of light, but also in which we actually fundamentally change the way in which we compute, because it's the fourth computing paradigm I've experienced in my lifetime, the decentralized computing paradigm. That is the vision of where we can really go with this. That's transformational. Now, the first step will be the intranets, the blockchains, as those get deployed. But that's not the end point, that's just a first step.
For us around XRP and the over 100 companies that are working with XRP, getting that clarity and that certainty, it's very clear to me that XRP is being used by many companies as a currency. You've had the US Department of Justice refer to XRP as a currency. You've had FinCEN refer to it as a currency, but you haven't yet had that clarity from the US SEC.
No, look, it's transformative. I want to go back to something we talked about around monetary policy, which is if this happens, which I think I say if, I think you're saying when. I get it. This back to what we were talking about, measuring things in our global economy. This also sounds incredibly deflationary because of the costs that will be driven out of our system. Agree, disagree? I mean, if we're going from paying a percent on a retail basis, 2%, 3% to move things around to virtually nothing, you want to be in the position where you've introduced this cost savings across the globe. You don't want to be a taker. You want to be somebody who leads in this area, is I think what you're saying. Because we now do have a global economy, and these savings are global. You want to be a leader.